Man in America podcast, hosted by OG FOXXIE. Welcome to the Black Men in America podcast. I'm your host, OG FOXXIE. We're diving into the inspirational words of Vice President Kamala Harris as she channels the strength and courage of Dr. King, John Lewis, and other icons of the civil rights movement. And we'll also confront the stark contrast presented by Donald Trump, whose actions threaten to undo the progress we fought so hard to achieve. Kamala Harris said, as we mark the 61st anniversary of the March on Washington, I am thinking of the heroes of the movement upon whose broad shoulders we stand.
I feel a great sense of duty and responsibility to those folks upon whose broad shoulders I stand. Dr. King, John Lewis, Dorothy Height, Bayard Rustin, A. Philip Randolph. So when I think about those heroes of the movement, they do guide me because their spirit and their work and their passion was about making our country better.
We should all feel a sense of duty and not let Trump take these gains away from us. Kamala Harris rocks a massive crowd in Georgia.
Wins in November, he intends to end the Affordable Care Act, to take us back to a time when insurance companies were not going back. We're going forward. And the reason we know we can't go back, to your point, the reason we know we can't go back on the issue of the Affordable Care Act, remember what that was like before we had the Affordable Care Act? Remember when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions? Remember what that was like? Children with asthma, breast cancer survivors, grandparents with diabetes.
We are not going back. Harris praises the audience at a rally in Savannah, Georgia.
I do believe it is the highest form of patriotism to fight for the ideals of our country. That is how we realize the promise of America. Georgia, for the past 2 election cycles, voters in this very state, you who are here, have delivered. You sent 2 extraordinary senators to Washington, D.C. You sent President Biden and me to the White House. You showed up. You knocked on doors. You registered folks to vote. And you made it happen. You did that. You did that. And so now we are asking you to do it again. Do it again. Let's do it again.
In the words of the immortal staple singers, let's do it again. Governor Walz said when Donald Trump was president, he blocked overtime benefits for millions of workers.
Look, I'll keep saying it. Words are cheap. Actions is all you should care about. Make sure you're counting on what was delivered. When Donald Trump was president, he blocked overtime benefits for millions of workers. He opposed efforts to raise the minimum wage, and he even proposed slashing budgets for federal fire service programs. Those are just simply facts. But look, it's not just what they've done, it's what they're going to do. This is the big thing. One of the goals of their Project 2025 is to screw the middle class, making it harder for workers to collectively bargain, allowing employers to drastically cut overtime or eliminate it, slash taxes for the ultra wealthy by imposing a national sales tax on the rest of us. Look, I've said this, I'm an old-time football coach. If you draw up a playbook, you plan on using it. Project 2025 is a plan to reshape what America looks like, moving away from the middle class and putting it right back on the oligarchs and the wealthy at the top. He said he's going to repeal the Affordable Care Act. That thing is pre-existing conditions. Those are things that make sure that our family gets health care. And for many of our families, and I know you don't get to participate in it, but your families do, my mom does, Social Security and Medicare are life-saving programs for them. Instead of funding those programs, they talk about cutting them. So here, this is what I always say. If you got $1 billion, you don't give a damn if your Social Security check shows up. But if you're like my mom, that's how you pay for your food. That's how you pay for your heat. That's how things get done. So that check, pretty damn important to protect it.
People had this money taken out of their check every week, and no one gave it to them, and so no one should be taking it from them. Trump mocks climate change.
The biggest risk today, when I hear these poor fools talking about global warming, they don't call it that anymore. They call it climate change because, some parts of the planet are cooling and warming. It didn't work. So they finally got it right. They just call it climate change. They used to call it global warming. Years ago, they used to call it global cooling. In the 1920s, they thought the planet was going to freeze. Now they think the planet's going to burn up. And we're still waiting for the 12 years. We're down almost to the end of the 12-year period. You understand that with these lunatics that know nothing. They weren't even good students at schools. They didn't even study it. They said, we have 12 years to live. And people didn't have babies because they said, we only have another. No, it's so crazy. But the problem isn't the fact that the oceans in 500 years will raise 1/4 of an inch. The problem is nuclear weapons. It's nuclear warming. These poor fools talk about global warming all the time. The planet's going to global warm to a point where the oceans will rise 1/8 of an inch in 355 years. They have no idea what's going to happen to weather.
Trump is a fool stating that it's nuclear warming. There are no nuclear bombs being blown off on a regular basis in the world. Trump said, I don't like when people call me stupid.
They used to call me JD. They said maybe stupid. So I said to Doc Ronnie, Doc Ronnie is now a great congressman in Texas. Great, very popular guy. I think he won by like 52 points or something. But he's now a great congressman. I said, Ronnie, I don't like when people call me stupid. I had great heritage, an uncle who was a great, great genius, a father who was a genius. Everybody, we have a lot of geniuses. I don't like being called stupid. Is there a test or something I can take to prove to these radical left maniacs that I'm much smarter than them? Is there a test? And he said, sir, there is a test. It's called the X test. I said, what's it like? He said, well, it gets very tough. The first questions are easy, and the middle of the test gets tough, and the end of the test is quite tough.
Trump is no genius, and he is stupid. Trump mocked war heroes.
But Frank, let me get to it. He hit me. He's not a war hero. He's a war hero. 5.5 years. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you. Do you agree with that? He's a war hero because he was captured, okay? You can.
This coming from a draft dodger. Trump on ending Roe v. Wade.
But we've done an amazing thing there, and that's a much softer issue than it was a little while ago. But, this has been an issue. Abortion's been an issue. Roe v. Wade. For 52 years,
Stripping women of their rights is not an amazing thing. Trump says he could have and should have won California.
I look at California. I gave a speech. I had a crowd so big. I said, "There's no way I could lose California," but automatically they mark it down if you're a Republican as a loss. That you lose by 5 million votes. I said, 5 million votes. I guarantee, if Jesus came down and was the vote counter, I would win California. Okay. In other words, if we had an honest vote counter, a really honest vote counter, I do great with the Hispanics. Great. I mean, at a level that no Republican's ever done. But if we had an honest vote counter, I would win California.
You think so?
Oh, I think so. I do. I see it. I go around California. They have Trump signs all over the place. It's a very dishonest. Everything is mail-in. They send out 38 million ballots. I think it is around 38 million ballots. They send them.
If Jesus came down, he would send Trump straight to hell. Trump claims the staff at Arlington Cemetery are bad people.
Military, those incredible parents and sisters and brothers, they asked me to go yesterday to Arlington, and I did. And while I was there for a long time, it was very tough to get to because I was not in a good position to get there. I was very far away, but I did. I made it and I got there right on time. And I spent a lot of time there. And while I was there, those families that asked me to be there, they said 3 families plus 1 soldier who was horrifically injured, both legs and an arm. And they asked me if I would be there. So I went. And while we were there, they said, "Could you take pictures over the grave of my son, my sister, my brother? Would you take pictures with us, sir?" I said, "Absolutely," I did. And then I said farewell. I said goodbye. And last night I read that I was using the site to politic, that I used it to politic. This all comes out of Washington, just like all of these prosecutors come out of Washington. They all come out. They send their prosecutors into the DA's office. They send them into the Attorney General's office. These are bad people we're dealing with. So I go there. They ask me to have a picture, and they say I was campaigning. I don't need – the one thing I get is plenty of publicity. I don't need that. I don't need the publicity. But these are great people. And when you think about it, Joe Biden killed their children by incompetence. Should have never happened. Kamala killed their children, just as though they had a gun in their hand, by gross incompetence. And not one general or incompetent bureaucrat was fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And then they accused me of having a picture taken at the tombstone with a family because they loved the president. They loved me and I loved them. I got to know them. Ask the cops in the street.
Trump was the biggest embarrassment in American history with his election and his dealings with dictators across the world. Trump's visit to the cemetery offended many people. Ratings and reviews can help the Black Man in America podcast reach a wider audience, and donations will improve the quality of our content. To donate, just click on the support the show link. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Paul Eaton, Major General, United States Army, retired. Every year, my wife and I pay our respects to the fallen in Arlington National Cemetery. Some were killed in action. Some have died of natural causes. It's a very emotive time for us. My father, Colonel Norman Eaton, and his co-pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Paul Getchell,
commingled remains are in Section 60. The remains of Lieutenant Ken Ballard, dear son of a close friend, Karen Meredith, are in Section 60. We have stood next to people crying, paying their respects to their sons, daughters, fathers. It's a very emotive event. To see a former president mugging for the camera should never, ever be Commander-in-Chief again for the Armed Forces of the United States. Ever.
I agree with him wholeheartedly. Trump said, vote for me this time. Once I'm in, it's not going to be important for you to vote again.
Say, vote this time. Get us in. Once we're going to fix the country, and it's not going to be important for you to come, and we're not going to need you voted. But we need the votes now.
Trump will invoke all the plans of Project 2025 and remain in power as a king. Vance says teachers who do not have biological children disorient and really disturb him.
And I think our conservative idea is that parents and families should determine what children learn, what values they were brought up with. Certainly the leaders of the left, and I hate to be so personal about this, but they're people without kids trying to brainwash the minds of our children. And that really disorients me, and it really disturbs me. Randy Weingarten, who's the head of the most powerful teachers union in the country, she doesn't have a single child. If she wants to brainwash and destroy the minds of children, she should have some of her own and leave ours the hell alone.
Vance should leave parents and people without children the hell alone. Vance admits there was an altercation at the Arlington National Cemetery.
Well, I think, first of all, the altercation at Arlington Cemetery is the media creating a story where I really don't think that there is one. There is verifiable evidence. There is verifiable evidence that the campaign was allowed to have a photographer there. There's verifiable, they were invited to have a photographer there. There's verifiable evidence that the families of these poor people who had their loved ones die 3 years ago at Abbey Road, Abbey Gate, those 13 Americans, a lot of them were there with the president. They invited him to be there and to support them. That's not an insult to the memories of their loved ones. They wanted Donald Trump there, and thank God that we have a president who stands with our veterans instead of one who runs away from them. Now
Vance says, you're acting like Donald Trump filmed a TV commercial at the gravesite.
You guys in the media, you're acting like Donald Trump filmed a TV commercial at a gravesite. He was there providing emotional support to a lot of brave Americans who lost loved ones they never should have lost, and there happened to be a camera there, and somebody gave him permission to have that camera there.
No, Trump made a campaign ad, which is illegal. Listen at the ad.
We lost 13 great people. What a horrible day it was. We didn't lose one person in 18 months. And then they took over that disaster, the leaving of Afghanistan.
That was an ad that he put on TikTok. Vance said, Trump and I are proud to be the most pro-worker Republican ticket in history. Check out the reaction to those comments.
President Trump and I are proud to be the most pro-worker Republican ticket in history. And I want to talk about why we're fighting for working people, why we're going to fight for unions and non-union alike. Now, our enemies and a lot of Democrats call us populists, like it's something of an insult.
The workers booed him. Vance blatantly lied about Trump's tariffs.
This
This is a lie. China just passed the tariffs on to the consumer. Trump and Vance have no policies to help people.
One and one international one. First of all, what are some of the specific policies you would implement to improve the lives of truckers in Erie, Pennsylvania? And then also, last night, Israel launched the largest raid in the West Bank in at least 20 years. Should the Israelis ask for American boots on the ground from a Trump-Vance administration, would you oblige, and how would you respond to these current events?
I don't want to put American troops on the ground for anybody's wars but ourselves, right? That's a very important principle. And I say that, and I say that as somebody who believes that the Israelis have every right to destroy Hamas. We support them in what they're doing, but they're not asking. They're not asking for American boots on the ground. They can take care of business themselves. They just need a vice president or a president who allows them to do the job instead of trying to take Hamas's side over Israel's, which is not what Donald Trump and I are going to do. The first question was about, sorry, I forgot your first question.
The first question was about specific policies that would help
truckers. Yep, that's good. That's right. So look, the most specific policy that we have to help the truckers of Erie, Pennsylvania is to fire Kamala Harris and to replace her with Donald Trump, right? That's what we...
As you can see, they had no policy. Vance lied when he said Trump is not being sued by Smith. Vance lied. Trump is not being sued by Smith.
I haven't read the whole thing, but it looks like Jack Smith doing more of what he does, which is filing these absurd lawsuits in an effort to influence the election. I think it's clearly an effort to try to do more election interference from Jack Smith. He should be ashamed of himself, and it's one of the reasons why we have to win, because he should not be anywhere near power.
It is important to note that contrary to what Vance said, this indictment is not a lawsuit. It's a formal accusation made by a grand jury that a person has committed a crime. Trump is not being sued by Smith.
Vance said she can go to hell, referring to Vice President Harris.
Kamala Harris is disgraceful. We're going to talk about a story out of those 13 brave, innocent Americans who lost their lives. It's that Kamala Harris is so asleep at the wheel that she won't even do an investigation into what happened, and she wants to yell at Donald Trump because he showed up. She can go to hell.
Trump and Vance should go to hell. Project 2025. Vance said, I want to shout out Pete Hoekstra.
Like I said, we've got some great leadership, like Mike Rogers, who are helping us in this fight. We've also got Chairman Pete Hoekstra, who will help turn Michigan red. Where's Pete at?
Pete Hoekstra is a Project 2025 author. Vance says he supports Trump's Project 2025 plan to take total control of civil servants.
I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people, and when the courts, because you will get taken to court, and then when the courts stop you, stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did and say the Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him enforce it.
Fire everyone in the government, then defy the Supreme Court.
These guys are anti-American and a bunch of criminals. Trump says he will fire America's military generals, echoing Project 2025.
Are you going to fire those generals? The woke generals at the top? Because you've been talking about it.
Yes, I would get rid of them, yeah. But see, now I know them. I didn't know them before. I came in. What do I know? I was a New York real estate person, but no, I'd fire them. I would fire them. You can't have woke military.
Another example of Trump wanting to be a dictator. Governor Walz said Project 2025 plan would allow employers to eliminate overtime pay while cutting taxes for the ultra-wealthy.
Look, I'll keep saying it. Words are cheap. Actions is all you should care about. Make sure you're counting on what was delivered. When Donald Trump was president, he blocked overtime benefits for millions of workers. He opposed efforts to raise the minimum wage, and he even proposed slashing budgets for federal fire service programs. Those are just simply facts. But look, it's not just what they've done, it's what they're going to do. This is the big thing. One of the goals of their Project 2025 is to screw the middle class, making it harder for workers to collectively bargain, allowing employers to drastically cut overtime or eliminate it. Slash taxes for the ultra-wealthy by imposing a national sales tax on the rest of us. Look, I've said this. I'm an old-time football coach. If you draw up a playbook, you plan on using it. Project 2025 is a plan to reshape what America looks like, moving away from the middle class and putting it right back on the oligarchs and the wealthy at the top. He said he's going to repeal the Affordable Care Act. That thing is pre-existing conditions. Those are things that make sure that our family gets health care. And for many of our families, and I know you don't get to participate in it, but your families do. My mom.
Kamala Harris said they are out of their minds.
And he would create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. It's right there in Project 2025. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Simply put, they are out of their mind.
And they are out of their minds. Project 2025 is the blueprint for Trump to make himself the most powerful president ever. Listen to this ad.
Donald Trump's back, and he's out for control.
I would have every right to go after them.
Complete control.
I will wield that power very aggressively.
And he has a plan to get it.
Detailed plans for exactly what our movement will do.
It's called Project 2025, a 922-page blueprint to make Donald Trump the most powerful president ever. Overhauling the Department of Justice, giving Trump the unchecked power to seek vengeance, eliminating the Department of Education, and defunding K-12 schools, requiring the government to monitor women's pregnancies, and severe cuts to Medicare and Social Security. Donald Trump may try to deny it, but those are Donald Trump's plans.
Well, revenge does take time, I will say that. And sometimes revenge can be justified.
He'll take control, we'll pay the price.
Under Project 2025, women will be monitored, prosecuted, and jailed for exercising their own bodily autonomy.
Driver's license, registration.
Here you go, sir. How's your day going?
That's your daughter?
Sure is.
Abigail, right?
How do you know?
Were you about 8 weeks pregnant? So you've been spotting recently. You've had any cramps or nausea?
That's personal.
You've been taking your prenatal vitamins?
Excuse me?
Are you ticketing me for something?
Where are you heading, Abigail?
To go see my older sister, Natalie.
Well, that's strange. It says here that Natalie's at a concert in Dallas, and your navigation is set to a women's health clinic in one of those abortion states.
We have the right to travel.
Not anymore. Step out of the car.
Please, officer.
Both of you out now. You, sir, are under arrest for crossing state lines to obtain an abortion for a minor under your care. And you, young lady, well, you're under arrest for evading motherhood.
This will be America under Donald Trump. Now we have all the times that Donald Trump threatened to gut Social Security, and Medicare.
One last question.
Go ahead.
Entitlements ever be on your plate?
At some point they will be. We have tremendous growth. We're going to have tremendous growth. This next year, it'll be toward the end of the year. The growth is going to be incredible. And at the right time, we will take a look at that. You know, that's actually the easiest of all things, if you look, because it's such a big
willing to do some of
If you don't cut something in entitlements, you'll never really deal with it.
But we're also going to have growth like you've never had before.
You changed your outlook on how to handle entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Mr. President? It seems like something has to be done, or else we're going to be stuck at 120% of debt to GDP forever.
So first of all, there is a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting. And
Project 2025 will be implemented if Trump is elected. Now we have some mad grannies on why they're voting for Kamala Harris.
She's trustworthy.
She's tough. She is prepared. She honors our military. She is experienced. She will put ethics in the court system. She is competent. She's about us, not me.
She genuinely cares.
She brings back the true American spirit. She is for common sense gun safety.
She has integrity.
This is a Mad Granny's production.
And the grannies aren't the only ones that are mad. Millions and millions of Americans are mad and don't want no Donald Trump ever again. Doug Emhoff had an interview with Bill Clinton, and Clinton has a message for the undecided voters.
President Clinton, great to see you. You gave an incredibly compelling speech the other night at the convention. If you can just boil it down to an argument or so to an undecided voter out there, I mean, what would you say?
You should vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz because their program will give us more shared prosperity, and it will give us a shared community where we all live under the same set of rules and all our children have a chance to live their dreams.
So everyone go to iwillvote.com. You got to register, and then you got to get out there and vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
For 4 years ago, Trump claimed that a Biden-Harris administration would cause America to go into a depression.
You will go into a depression, and I'm very good at predicting this. You will go into a depression, the likes of which this country has not seen since 1929, and who knows, maybe worse than that. They are playing a suicide mission. If they want to raise your taxes, they want to raise your taxes by $4 trillion. And that's going to be almost everybody's tax. They're saying for the rich? No, not for the rich. They're going to be raising everybody's taxes almost.
Evidence that Trump's words are worthless. Fox News says that Harris has a 2-point lead in their latest poll.
Heading now out east to North Carolina. Former President Trump is also ahead there by 1 point. We'll say that he wins the state of North Carolina. We are going to give the state of Arizona to the vice president. And then the recent polling showed President Biden 5 points behind in North Carolina, and it's very, very tight right now. So go back to the map. It brings us to 264 to 258. Again, 270 is what you need to win. And guess what remains? Georgia. Georgia remains. It was the closest contest in 2020, decided by less than 0.25 of a percentage point in favor of President Biden. Our recent polling showed the widest gap, 6 points, for former President Trump over President Biden. But now that has closed. Harris has a 2-point lead in our latest poll. It's expected to be a close race. That's obviously within the margin of error. But both candidates are spending a lot of time in Georgia, and if that lead holds, she wins Georgia, she wins the presidency of the United States.
That's it for today's episode of Black Men in America. Remember, the fight for justice and equality is ongoing, and it's up to all of us to carry the torch forward. I'm OG FOXXIE signing off. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay in the fight. And may God bless us all. Black Men in America podcast and OG FOXXIE production. Love and peace to us all.